Do we have insurance or do the farmers have their own insurance?
On the dry land where we cash land, the farmers help carry the insurance. If we do these, and Brian and I talked about this, if we do corn and soybeans, we'll probably put insurance back on those again. There's a little bit of risk there. With the irrigation, we take out a lot of that risk in terms of how the crop's going to grow. There could always be a hailstorm or something. So in the past, when we had seed corn production, we would take out some minimal insurance just to give us a little safety net. It costs us about another $19 to $20 an acre. Those aren't in those budgets right now, but it's probably something, once we set the final budget, we'll probably do that just for that safety for the airport. I am asking the airport to put out a lot of money. This is a lot more money than we've ever put out in the past. A lot of that goes back to last year, Pioneer told us to put the seed corn production away from us. So all the seed costs that you see in these budgets is mostly something we've never had to deal with in the past. So that's turned about $40,000, $40,000 to $50,000. We didn't have to put out in the past that we're starting to have to absorb into these budgets.
Why do we have to absorb that? Why aren't we doing seed corn still?
We're not doing seed corn still.
That's what
When we were doing seed corn, that was there was no cost for the seed for us that we had to pay out.
Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we
Because Pioneer and Monsanto, all the seed companies have drawn back all their contracts. Columbus area, at one time we were growing 8 to 10,000 acres of seed in this area. Last year they grew 2,000, so they cut all the production down that much. Decatur County produced 0 seed corn last year. Shelby County, even some of the irrigation in Shelby County, was 0 production.
So it wasn't our choice to do that?
No, we didn't walk away from that because it's been one of our greatest tools. And that's kind of why we're struggling around trying to find some of these other crops, potatoes, pickles. We tried melons. We're looking for anything that gives us some kind of advantage. And that's kind of what besides kind of watching the crops, I kind of keep searching, where there's another niche that we might be able to park ourselves in.
Dave, total acres that we farm and irrigated acres?
Irrigated acres is about 600 acres irrigated out of a little over 1,200 total.
Did that include Wellsboro? Does that 1,200 include the Wellsboro property?
Off top, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's about 1,200 here and there's 400 there, so it's more 1,800 total. Sorry.
Tillable or?
It's all total. That's when I talk about acreage, I'm talking about what we're planning and receiving income off of.
I just added the numbers on your second bullet point. It was like 732 acres. Is there any discussion or plan for the remainder there, which would be what, 900 and some acres?
Those are all going, that's all dry crop acres, and that'll be our farm tenants that we have, rotation. Some of that's already in wheat, dry land wheat for next year. Most of them we're rotating between corn and soybeans on those dry land acres.
We've looked at options of irrigating some of the dry land acres that we have, just not really, none of them are really good pivot areas. And some of the ones that we probably looked at doing some various other things besides pivots, we have future development plans for those as part of our future land plan.
Most of the irrigation was put on here mostly because of seed corn, because 5, 6 years ago when we put a new pivot in, we were guaranteed to see corn contract at time, with Ford at $7 corn. We were having a payout in 2 1/4, 2.5 years, 3 years max. So those systems were paying, and they're still paying for themselves. We paid them off really quick. The problem is now when we go to look at putting another pivot on a piece of ground, we're gonna look at 7, 8, 9 years, just because the economies aren't there anymore to get that quicker payout, so.
I feel like I'm doing the farm instead of the Yeah.
That's where more than half of our budget comes from, so we want to make sure we don't screw it up.
Yeah.
Right, and that's, I mean, I try to look at everything and, you know, again, keep some balance, you know, some rotations in there and, you know, keep us in a progress where, you know, 1 year wheat and double crops has been, you know, in the past, that's been one of our highest returning, crop mixes. You know, this budget here should be one of our weaker ones. And, but, you know, right now I'm looking at, you know, wheat prices for next July and August being, you know, actually sub $5 right now, which is, we haven't seen for years. Those are the kind of things we try to juggle and do the best we can for everyone here.
Any other questions from the board?
Dave, thank you very much.
It's a lot of work, and you're to be commended. Thank you.
I appreciate it. As I said, you know, if there's any, go ahead.
So on these 3 pages, we're looking at 104,000 and change as far as expenses, right?
No, it's
If you look
actually,
at page 3.
page 3
Estimated
is, that was
operating
just,
funds.
that's just for the wheat double crop. And that one's a little hard to, because I'm working with 2 years crops at a time with that. Because right now I've got 270 acres, 272 acres of wheat double crops already planted. So we've already paid for part of that fertilizer this last fall. We've got wheat seed that we paid for already. But I'm looking at, you know, the crop for 17, so I've got to start budgeting double crop soybeans, fertilizer for the next fall. So it's, you know, it's you know, a pretty big budget. That 104,000, that's just the wheat double crop side of it. And that can change if we decide to reduce our acres some for 2017.
Well, the rest of what I'm going to ask is I'm looking at the 15 farm profit and loss, and we're showing total expenses for 15, including Alderman and everything else, at 108,000 and change. So this is almost 105, when 15's total expenses was 108. Am I reading that right, wrong, or what am I?
Well, actually, it's going to be more like 160 something thousand this year. Not
This year's going to be 160, but
Yeah.
with
The
a
difference is-
declining return, because we know that farm profit is going down.
Right.
So the ask is higher for a lesser return.
The difference is,
What we're gonna wind up with.
yeah, this last year we had a watermelon king issues and
Right.
out front, a lot of those
There's
costs. that
270
previous
some
year-
acres that we had no expense, we had zero risk in. Well, we had risk in it, but, you know, there was not any actual outlay for inputs on that 270 acres, which now is, you know, that's what those acres is what went into wheat for this coming year.
We go in with a budget of 150,000 typically. That's our line item for this, 150,000. So it's certainly more, I think.
It's actually increasing because we're having to put up for more for seed this year.
Right.
So that wasn't, didn't totally have all that available when we started the budget.
Well, part of what I'm going after is we've got 3 new people sitting here that probably, like Mark already said, I think I'm on the farm board. So do they have a total picture of what they're approving, or if we're going to be approving this estimated outlay when they don't have a total picture of what they're looking at?
And
Do you feel like
I went
you
through
know
the
what
same
you're
thing
looking
that
at?
Mark did the first few years in here. I grew up on a farm, but this was a whole new level of farming. So it took a number of meetings before, you know, even some of the words that Dave was using.
If we wanted to sit down and, you know, kind of have a small, you know, session about, you know, going through this a little bit slower and, you know, at that level, you know, that's what I'm here for.
We've discussed having an executive session to bring the members up to speed on a lot of things. Maybe you could participate in that.
Yeah, and I'm more than happy to provide my input on, you know, on the parts that I'm responsible for, so.
Yeah, we appreciate
Because,
it.
you know, you're right, Greg, that, you know, there's a lot to absorb there and see.
And that's where I was going, because we haven't got to the profit and loss farm report, but looking at this, I can see sitting there and going, oh, last year's expenses were only 180. What is going on here? So just,
But there,
just to make sure everyone's on board.
and
with what's going
the
on.
biggest answer to that is with what we did with the melons last year. That took a huge part of our inputs off the table that we didn't pay for. So it's shifting around.
The thing that helped, to look at Mark's comment again too, the thing that helped me the most was going through a year process with Dave and during the explanations of the pieces that happened. Gave a lot of meaning, a lot of background meaning to the numbers. It's hard to go down this sheet, even now, I can look at this for a number of years. It's hard to go down that sheet and, you know, really comprehend where all the pieces lie.
There's a lot of details, you know, but I'm trying to get, just provide as much information so at least you know kind of where we're coming from. You know, right now the input side we can lock in pretty well. You know, our marketing side is something we have to kind of work with as the year goes on, and we've got targets out there, you know, so at least meet these returns, and you know, my goal is to do better. You know, there's no guarantee.
Now, for the board members, last year was a good example where Dave, who is a professional farm manager, that's why we hire him, at what I think is an incredibly efficient fee to do all this, so we don't have to dig down the weeds. But last year, he took us from a $40,000 to $50,000 potential loss to what was going to be a big plus, which didn't work out through the fault of our own, where the grower went bankrupt, but we came out no worse than we would have anyway with the dry crops. So those are the kinds of things that he does and looks out for us, and he does everything in conjunction with Brian. So it's not like he's out there just doing it on his own. But 15 years he served the airport well, and again, with 2 different airport managers over that period of time, and we have benefited greatly. And you heard some of the things he's talking about here, always looking at different opportunities, pickles, potatoes, you know, melons, whatever it happens to be, tomatoes. Anything we can do to balance our production and market what we think might be the most saleable products. So Dave's performance, in my opinion, has just been stellar.
The difference between our dry land crops and our irrigated crops is, you know, 100
It's better than $100 an acre.
Yeah. And that's after the inputs that we put in.
Yeah.
That's the net return we get.
Right, and with these budgets, that I also looked at some alternative lease scenarios where we want, they're all coming in $100 to $150 less than what our potential, we have more risk, you know, one reason for the insurance, but our potential reward is much higher by taking that risk, which is particularly how it all works. You know, there are other scenarios if we want to accept, you know, less risk, less return. In the past, that's not been the way we've tried to go. We've tried to maximize within reason the best we can do.
Do you have any kind of a unified projection? Maybe, you know, not necessarily by acre, but by parcel or dry land, wetland, by month or by quarter, showing your estimated expenses,
Like a cash flow for the whole.
cash flow for the year?
I haven't.
By parcel of ground?
Quick answer, no. We, in the past, we just kind of did the annual budget and then work things through. I can put, I can cash flow it out to some extent if if you wanted to see something like that. But in the past, we haven't done that. And I don't have one right now, but we could. I've looked at, normally from my standpoint, I always look at it on an annual basis. If I can break it down for a quarter, if that would help the board members.
You know, I don't want to create a lot of work, but it seems like the questions I have anyway are, you know, how big is the asset that we have, you know, 1,600 plus acres.
How's it flow?
Yeah, you know, we're gonna invest some amount of money
Up front.
upfront. What do we anticipate the return on that investment being? You know, and everybody understands market conditions, maybe not everybody.
I mean, I can take what, you know, because I did per acre budgets for each crop to kind of show it, and I flipped it over to what my plan was on acres. And I can spread, you know, give that into a better format for you, show you what I anticipate, you know. Just because of the advantage on the prepays, you know, I'm suggesting that it's my advice to, you know, front load this, you know, then the income's gonna come, you know, in the last quarter, you know. My marketing has always been, since I've been here, is I don't really think in terms of calendar year. I mean, if I have advantages to holding crops over and selling them in the following year, that's what I've done in the past. So I've always tried to market where I thought our best returns were.
As Dave said, we've always set ourselves up to have a little bit more risk, have a little bit more reward. So we upfront a lot more money, and then we have more reward per acre at the end of the day. If we were to let the farmers take on that risk and buy the seed and buy the chemicals and the fertilizer, our return on our acres will be less, considerably less. So that's why we have upfronted those in the past. It's just shockingly that it's so much more this year than it has been in any previous year, again, because of seed corn, and then last year because of the tomatoes and cantaloupe and watermelon. So it's more this year. I think we're all, trust me, when Dave sat down and showed me these numbers, it was, you know, shocking to me as well. But knowing that we're going to make $50, $75 more an acre doing this, rather than putting all of the risk on the farmers themselves, is the why we continue to do this.
I can go back and kind of, I don't know that I can do it monthly accurately. I think I can do it, you know, kind of put in a quarterly type report for you and go on total dollars a little bit more so you see it that way. Okay? We can do that pretty quick, relatively quickly. Okay?
Maybe we could make that part of that executive session so that
Yeah.
some ideas of what you'd like to see in those results. Those good questions.
Like I said, and, you know, I've got a meeting tomorrow. It may or may not, you know, I've had a lot of these meetings, some pan out, some don't. So, you know, everything could change in, you know, in 24 hours. So, that's why. Any other questions?
I have another financial question, but I'll defer that until we talk through the financial report as a whole for the.
Okay. Okay. David, thank you. Mark, we're going to take you back to airport rather than farm. So we can get the engineer's report. Nick, please.
All right, thank you. My name is Nick Eisenberg. I work for a full-service architecture engineering firm out of Indianapolis by the name of Wolford. Been with the airport now for 3 years. As far as Wolford, my personal experience, I was there about 7 years prior to that as well with the previous administration. We basically do a lot of coordination with the FAA, with NDOT, with the airport, really trying to create that team concept and figure out how are we going to project our future CIP, which is capital improvement plan, and you'll hear that a lot tonight. What are we looking at the next 5 years? How are we going to get that funded? What's the priority of that project in the FAA's eyes and NDOT's eyes? That's kind of what we did in a nutshell. Last year, we completed a project which you're probably all familiar with, runway 1432, which is across Wind Road. Reeve Riley was the contractor out there. We took all the asphalt off, reutilized the existing World War II concrete, and then put another 10 to 12 inch varying depth of new concrete on top. Really increased the strength. And that's really good because you're getting a lot more military C-130 and 5 and 7 traffic tankers. So that's been really good. It's going to be a great benefit for the airport. Really just trying to get that project wrapped up, closed out sooner than later. That's why you see a couple of pay requests, which is new based on what I emailed you. That's the big update. Then your engineer's report in front of you. It's two pay requests. One is for AIP 26. The way this worked was, this was about a $5 million project, but the FAA broke it up into 2 years, or 2 grants. Actually, it wasn't even quite 2 years, but in 2 grants. AIP, Airport Improvement Plan, 26, and then AIP 27 here. So I think AIP 26 was about 2.2, and then AIP 27 was about $2.5 million. AIP 26, we're right there, almost closed out with that. I have all the as-built in. I have all the closeout documentation that the FAA requires and that the state requires. So Reeve Riley is looking for approval from the board for their final pay request minus retainage in the amount of $60,696.72. I will let you know as well that we're currently at deduct of $61,877.78 in the contract overall. And we're still holding the retainage in the amount of $124,811.18. There's a lot of requirements, a lot of stipulations they have to meet with the FAA and with NDOT before I can ever release that 10%. So that's kind of where we're at, and we'll have to seek approval for that pay request so that I can get that submitted to the FAA. How that process works: we bring a pay request to the board when we ask for approval of it. What that does is then the airport president generally signs that, and then we submit it to the FAA. Then the FAA reimburses the city, the airport, and then the airport cuts those checks. Okay, so that's the process. This grant is funded at 90%, 5%, 90% FAA, 5% state, 25% local. And same with AIP 27 as well. That's a great thing. The highway side is about 80% federal. But on the aviation or the FAA side, we get everything at 90%. So it's really good program to really help your airport, especially an old World War II airport, with a lot of their infrastructure needs. Is there any questions on AIP 26?
You might tell them why it was broken into, when our preference was to do it once, and the cost differential overall, because of the FAA's way they administer it.
In what regard, Steve?
Well, had we been able to do it all at once, we would save us $400,000, whatever.
Yeah, we would.
Not us personally, but the whole project.
Right, and we got a lot of support from a lot of different people to try to get the project funded in one year. Obviously, that's the best thing to do because it saves the FAA money, because you have less mobilization, demobilization, less construction engineering, less everything when you get this as one project versus 2 projects. Obviously, operational costs to the airport and impacts to the airport, and how we're going to shut the airport down to be able to do this project. So yeah, I think we were more than 400,000. We were greater than 500, closer to $750,000. It would have cost the FAA and less to do it 1 year versus 2 years. But the FAA came back at us and said, that's great, but we don't have the program funds for that, so you're going to get it in 2 years. Now, what they did do was give us one grant at the very end of 2014. So we couldn't even start construction in 2014 because winter was going to take its toll. So we decided to hold off. The next grant came spring of 15. So we were able to tie everything together. It ended up working out, but we had to bid it twice. So we still got a lot of additional cost incurred. The other good thing is, as part of that project, the FAA really opened their eyes. And we're starting to see more $5 million jobs, more $6 million jobs, $3 million jobs, and so on across the state because of that. Meaning they're seeing the cost savings they can have long term by doing bigger projects, plus the operational cost that you will save by doing bigger projects. So, does that answer the question, Steve?
Thank you.
Is there any more questions on 26? 27 is going to be the exact same thing. It's another pay request for Reeve Riley. They actually submitted this pay request in December, but they submitted it a day after the board meeting. They have to give me all their pay requests a week ahead. The board meeting, that we have time to get everything to be able to present to you all. So this pay request is in the amount of $406,286.14. That's a local portion, your 5%, of $20,313.83. AIP 27 retainage is $112,573 still being held.
What's the time frame and requirements for releasing retainage?
Honestly, they can't even finish their punch list items until springtime.
In the season?
If I have them go out there and even work on any grades, they're going to tear everything apart. So Brian and I discussed it and decided let's wait till spring to get them out here to get the punch list items complete. And then I can't release anything until that's done in short. So
And that's on 27 on the.
both. So I'll need a motion or approval for these two pay requests by the board. Unless there's any further questions, I'll be happy to answer.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
That's a question.
Sure.
From an inspection perspective, again, I apologize, this is being new. What is who is responsible for inspecting the work prior to the funds being released?
Prior to the retainage being released or prior to
Prior to
any
the
pay
pay
request?
request.
A lot of times they'll hold us, your consultant, as a construction manager liable, although we coordinate with Brian, their airport director. So we do everything we can to make sure that Brian's happy with the construction activities. We update the board as well, but as your construction manager and in our scope, we try to be the liaison to make sure that the contractor is meeting those FAA and state requirements. And we go through weekly, just to try to help answer your question, we go through weekly with the contractor, all his quantities. So it's not like we're getting them right before the board meeting, we're trying to go back and verify. So we're weekly going through that in the field during construction. And we hire B&R Inspection on this project specifically as our inspector, and then we're the construction manager for it. We do a lot of work with B&R.
That's an independent third-party
They are.
inspection firm.
They are. We have our own inspectors, but B&R, Bruce Taggart, and Wolbert go a long ways back. He has 25 years of inspection experience. I didn't want any hiccups on this project. It was a big project. I felt comfortable with him and his concrete experience on it.
So is that true for both the pay request and the retainage? Similar process?
So the retainage is a little bit different. They have a lot of, you know what, I have gifts for the 3 new board members. And this is inside, AIP improvement training. And I don't think anybody's ever read one of these, fully, I should say. Yeah, exactly, this will put you to sleep really quick. I don't expect you to, here's the thing, they'll probably change it this year again. It constantly changes, and that's also what we do, is stay on top of all the changes by the FAA, by the state, and keep the board abreast of the changes. But to go back to your question, there is a long checklist that they have to meet to be able to release that retainage, making sure all their subs are paid. Okay, conditional waivers and as bills. Their quantities, I'm still working on the final change orders. The numbers you have in front of you on the engineer's report, 99.99% complete. Really, I'm going through another QA/QC on that before I submit you anything to sign off on. There's a lot of requirements that they have to do, so they have to meet those. And then we had a final inspection meeting. We created about a 2-page punch list, minor items, but we still created a 2-page punch list. The state was out here, they also did the inspection. They will come back out to make sure that those punch list items are complete prior to releasing that retainage. And after they receive all their documents on CD that the contractors are responsible to submit.
So NDOT is a second.
They should.
Is a second inspection.
Well, and in addition, FAA also does their own review of all of our pay requests before they approve them.
Right.
So does NDOT. So
FAA.
there's numerous checkpoints
NDOT does a physical inspection, FAA does not.
for the retainage release, you're correct.
FAA did do a physical inspection of Illinois as well.
They did during the Department of
Yes.
And they actually met, or had a lot of the same comments we already identified in the punch list. So I guess then,
Motion in a second, right?
We have a motion and a second. Public comments, questions on the IP 26 and 27? Runway okay out there? You used it as much as anybody?
yet.
Okay.
Snow has to stop.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed?
thank you. It generally takes, just so everybody's aware, once we submit that to the FAA, Linda, you're getting 3 days max, the funds,
Today's portion, yes.
if not sooner. I mean, they've been pretty responsive lately.
No.
Yeah,
Right, well,
that's a significant improvement. That used to take
I know.
weeks.
It's, yeah,
sometimes it's 24 hours.
extremely quick now.
Very good.
The last item I have to cover is the ACIP. Again, that's the Airport Capital Improvement Plan. One thing you're going to learn from me and from Brian is we use a lot of acronyms. So don't be afraid just to ask what that means. I'd be happy to help out. ACIP is Airport Capital Improvement Plan. Again, that's your 5-year plan. We prepared that 5-year plan. It's probably in your packet. We include that in your packet. Okay.
Yes.
We prepared that with the board and with Brian. Brian really puts forth a lot of effort into these CIPs, making sure that the board's priorities are identified. We do an AIP, Airport Improvement Plan, and a local CIP for really one reason. I like to show what we're doing on a local front versus just what we're expecting on the AIP side, on the federal side. I mean, we're not just looking to receive FAA money, but hey, look, we're also doing all these projects locally, mainly to help maintain our infrastructure that UFA are federally invested in. So I think that that's been a big improvement. I know when I started here 3 years ago, and Brian, a little bit before that, but, you know, I've seen a great deal change between the FAA and between the airport in regards to just communication levels. Brian's done a great job. And really, I think what the FAA sees the airport doing on a local standpoint to better the airport in regards to revenue generation, doing everything they can to become more and more self-sufficient. So really, you are a model for all the other airports in the state from the FAA and outside. And that's good. That's what we want to be. So one thing on the CIP that we didn't have programmed the last few years, in 2016 we have this year, is taxiway A lighting. So what we're going to do there is we're going to request for a pop-up grant. It wasn't programmed. They don't have the monies programmed to be able to do that project, although you're incurring a lot of maintenance costs to continuously fix taxiway A lighting out here. So we're going to try to get, at the end of the year, that's usually the September time frame, a pop-up grant to get all of the taxiway A lighting replaced and go with LED systems like that. So that's the big change that we added to the CIP this year, and we only added that just due to the investment that we're making on a local standpoint to maintain that system.
If we have all the questions, will they be lighting resolved?
I think the big, and Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the big issue with the LED lighting is on the runway perspective, correct?
Yes.
Not necessarily on the taxiway.
On the heads-up.
So we're not reflecting any LED lights that won't be in the near future for the runway. And in fact, you're not the only one we've heard that from either. There are problems with the LED lighting. The problem, there's problems with the chips inside them. They're starting to go out about the same time an incandescent light goes out. We're having problems with the regulators, all manufacturer type problems that they're still trying to make the kinks out of. So why do we want to go to an LED? Because the FAA also doesn't want to invest in an incandescent system that's going to be obsolete. They want to move forward to the LED, hoping that these bugs get worked out on the manufacturer side. So,
What do your acronyms mean under general comments and notes? NPD, D, S?
oh, sorry about that. NPE is your non-primary entitlement funding. So you're entitled to $150,000 every year by the FAA. Now, you're not going to receive that unless you have a project. So if you have a runway project, that money just goes with the discretionary funding. If you have land acquisition, you can use it for your land acquisition. Lighting project, it's going to go to your highest priority project. So, but it is an entitlement fund of $150,000 each and every year. You can elect, and I don't think Portland Airport's going to be in this position for a while, but you could elect to roll over for 3 years. Say you want to put in reserve $450,000 because you want to build another hangar. You can do that. But then you can't take another discretionary grant, which is year-end money in the FAA's eyes. You can't take another discretionary grant for 3 years after that. Because you use that money for a revenue-generating project, they have to wait another 3 years. So there's not a lot of positives to that if you have the projects to warrant moving forward with discretionary funds.
So the question is really running because of the known issues with that system. Are there manufacturer warranties that come with it?
There is, yeah, there absolutely is. I think we have, after the contract is done, he always has a 2-year warranty. We put that in all of our contracts because of the FAA. In addition, I think we're a 20-year warranty for parts. I'm not sure, but I have to look back into that.
One of the reasons why we did that, he talked about a lot of maintenance. Over the last 2 years, we put $40,000 into figuring out what's going on with alpha light. So a lot of times, if it gets a heavy rain, they won't come on at all. If it's light rain, it'll become dim. But it's a lot of direct burial cable. It's just deteriorating because it's the oldest piece of lighting we have. So that's why we've asked for some discretionary funds, which is what's marketed with the discretionary funds in here. This pop-up grant we discussed.